My name is Mara Shaw. I am 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, I laid my mother to rest. 2 weeks after that, I discovered a letter hidden behind the mirror on her dresser. It was a letter my father wrote the year I was born. It said, "I know she is not mine, but I will love her as my own. But if you ever tell her the truth, I will tell her what you did." My father passed away 10 years ago. My mother never told me anything about this. There was a phone number written on the back of that letter. The ink was old and faded, but still clear enough to read. I called the number. The man who answered said my name before I could even speak. That phone call broke open 34 years of silence. What came out about my family, about my mother, about a piece of land, and about a lie that held everything together changed every story I had ever believed about myself. Before I explain what happened next, if you connect with family stories like this, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly speaks to you, and share your location and local time in the comments. I would really like to know where you are listening from. Now, let me take you back to a Tuesday afternoon in October, the day I walked into my mother's empty bedroom for the first time since the funeral. The house smelled the same as it always had, lavender hand cream and lemonwood polish. But now those smells no longer meant my mother was home. They meant she used to be. I stood in the doorway of her bedroom for a full minute before I finally stepped inside. The bed had been cleared by the hospice team. The nightstand still held her reading glasses and a half-empty glass of water, the rim slightly cloudy with age. No one had touched it. Nate had offered to come with me, but I told him I needed to do this alone. He understood. He always understands. I started with the dresser. In the top drawer, there were bobby pins, a tube of lipstick she had not used in years, and a prescription bottle with 2 pills left inside. In the second drawer, I found old birthday cards I had given to her. I recognized my handwriting from when I was 10 years old. "Happy birthday, Mom. You are the best mom ever." In the third drawer, there was a property tax notice from 2019, held together with a rubber band and attached to a stack of receipts. Nothing unusual, nothing that explained anything. Then I moved to the mirror. My mother sat at that vanity every morning for as long as I could remember, brushing her hair, putting on her earrings, and checking her face before leaving for the day. That mirror had watched her grow older. I reached out to wipe the dust, and the wooden frame shifted slightly. It was loose. The back had separated from the stand. I tilted it forward, and a yellowed envelope slid out from behind the glass and landed face up on the dresser. My mother's name was written on the front, Linda, and the handwriting. I recognized it immediately. The slightly cramped L, the way the D curved back into itself. My father wrote me a birthday card every single year until he could no longer hold a pen. I would recognize that handwriting anywhere. I picked up the envelope. It was still sealed. I sat on the edge of the stripped bed and carefully opened it. The paper inside was thin, just one sheet, written only on the front, dated March 1992. My father's handwriting was small and tight, as if he was trying to keep the words from taking up too much space. "Linda, I had the blood test done when she was 6 months old. I know she is not mine, but she is my daughter. I chose her. I will keep choosing her. If you ever tell her the truth, I will tell her what you did to my mother's land. This is the last time we speak about this, Greg." I read it 3 times. Each time, different words hit me in a different way. Not mine, what you did, my mother's land. The room did not go quiet. It went still, like the air itself had stopped moving. My father, Greg Shaw, the man who carried me on his shoulders at the county fair, who drove 40 minutes each way to my college orientation, who held my hand in the hospital during the last week of his life, had known since I was 6 months old that I was not his. And he stayed. He stayed and never said a word. I turned the envelope over. On the back, written in a different ink, bluer and newer, like it had been added years later, there was a phone number. 10 digits, no name, no explanation. I sat there holding that envelope for what felt like forever, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour. The light in the room shifted, and shadows slowly moved across the floor. My hands were not shaking yet. That came later. At that moment, I was just trying to understand which part of my life was real and which part had been something else. And I kept coming back to that phone number. I called Nate from the kitchen. I could not stay in that bedroom. "I found something," I said, "behind the mirror. A letter from my dad." He arrived at the house in 20 minutes. I do not remember if I said anything else during that call. I only remember standing at the counter, staring at the letter lying flat on the wooden surface like it was evidence, which in a way it was. Nate read it once, then set it down. He read it again. "Mara, I know this says." "I know what it says." He pulled out a chair and sat next to me. He did not touch the letter again. He did not try to explain it or suggest that it meant something different. Nate is good that way. He does not try to fill silence with unnecessary words, I pulled out the small notebook I carry everywhere. A habit for my work as a reporter. I opened to a blank page and started writing. Who is my biological father? What did Mom do to Grandma Evelyn's land? Why did Dad hide this behind the mirror instead of telling me? What is the phone number? 4 questions, 34 years of answers I never knew I was missing. You do not have to call that number tonight, Nate said. I looked at him, then back at the number written on the envelope. I know, I said, but I am going to. I had spent 34 years trusting a story. The story of a happy family, loving parents, and a quiet, simple childhood in Cedar Hollow. I trusted it because I never had a reason not to. There were no signs, no slips, no cracks in the foundation. It turns out the cracks were simply hidden behind a mirror, and that phone number was the first thread I was going to pull. I did not sleep that night. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting on the front porch, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold, with the letter resting in my lap. Nate had gone home around midnight. He wanted to stay, but I told him I needed time to think. For me, thinking means being alone with a notebook and too many questions. At 7:15, I picked up my phone and dialed the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a man answered. His voice was low and slightly rough, the kind of voice that sounded like he had been awake for a while. Mayor, I stopped breathing. I had not said anything. I had not introduced myself. I had not even made a sound. Mara, he said again, more gently this time, as if he was careful not to break the moment. I have been waiting for this call for 11 years. My name is Thomas Beckett. I tightened my grip on the porch railing in front of me. How do you know my name? There was a long pause. Then he said, your father, Greg, came to see me before he died. He told me about the letter. He told me that one day you would find it, and when you called this number, I should be ready. I closed my eyes. The morning air was cold. It was October in central Illinois. I could hear a neighbor's sprinkler clicking somewhere down the street. Greg came to see you, I repeated. In 2014, 1 year before he passed. He drove to my house in Millbrook and sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours. My father, who could barely climb stairs during the last 6 months of his life, drove 45 minutes to sit with this man. Except Thomas Beckett was not a stranger. There are things you need to know, Thomas said, but not over the phone. Can we meet? I did not get the chance to drive to Millbrook that day because my aunt arrived first. I was still sitting on the porch, still trying to process the conversation, when a silver Buick pulled into the driveway. There was no phone call, no message, just Pamela Osborne stepping out of the passenger seat while her son Derek turned off the engine. Pamela is my mother's younger sister, 57 years old, a church volunteer, the type of person who brings casseroles to funerals and makes sure everyone notices. Good morning, sweetheart, she said, already walking past me into the house. We came to help you sort through things. I had not asked for help. Derek followed her inside without saying anything. 61 years old, broad, recently divorced, with the constant expression of a man who believed the world owed him something. He went straight to the garage. By the time I walked inside, Pamela was already in the living room opening drawers. Aunt Pam, what are you doing? Sorting. Your mother had a lot of things. Someone has to go through them. I'm going through them. That is why I'm here. She waved her hand as if I had said something unimportant. Then she looked at me with the expression she had perfected over the years. Warm on the surface, but firm underneath. Your mother promised me this house. She told me herself 2 Thanksgivings ago. She never told me that. Well, Pamela said, straightening a stack of magazines that did not need fixing. You were not exactly around much, were you? From the garage, I heard Derek opening boxes, metal scraping against concrete. My father's tools. I walked toward the door. Derek, those are my dad's things. He did not look up. Relax, it is just stuff. I noticed Pamela glance once toward my mother's bedroom, toward the dresser, toward the mirror, like she was checking something. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. Not Margaret Holloway. I did not know about her yet. I called a general estate attorney in the next county and asked a simple question. My mother died without a will. Who inherits in Illinois? He told me that if there is no surviving spouse and only one child, the entire estate goes to the child. So the house is mine. Legally, yes. Unless someone files a competing claim, someone already had. Pamela had gone to the county probate office that same morning and filed a handwritten document that she claimed was my mother's last will and testament. 1 page, dated 6 months before my mother's death, leaving the house and everything in it to Pamela Osborne. The attorney explained that in Illinois, a handwritten will can be valid if it meets certain requirements, including proper witnesses, clear intent, and a verified signature. You should examine that signature carefully, he said. I thought about my mother's handwriting. I had seen it thousands of times. Grocery lists, birthday cards, the notes she left on the fridge every morning when I was in high school. Have a good day, baby girl. Then I thought about the document Pamela filed. I had not seen it yet, but something felt wrong. The kind of feeling you get after 10 years as a reporter, when your instincts notice something your mind has not fully processed yet. If I did nothing, if I allowed Pamela's claim to stand, she would take the house. She would remove everything, every trace of my father, every drawer, every envelope hidden behind every mirror, and anything else my mother had hidden would disappear with it. Nate said it clearly. If you do not fight this, she takes everything your parents built. He was right, and I was only at the beginning. I need to pause here for a moment because at this point, I am standing in my mother's kitchen, holding a letter that says I am not who I thought I was. Well, my aunt is in the next room measuring the windows for new curtains. If you are listening to this and you have ever had a family member show up with a moving truck before everything has even settled, leave a comment and tell me. I need to know I am not the only one. And if you are still here, subscribe, because what happens when I meet Thomas is something I still struggle to believe. Now, back to that week, because things moved quickly after that. 2 days later, I drove to Millbrook, 45 minutes through flat farmland in Illinois, the kind of drive where the sky feels so wide that it makes you feel small. I passed grain elevators, an abandoned gas station, and a church with a sign that read, "The truth will set you free." I almost laughed when I saw it. Thomas Beckett lived at the end of a gravel road. It was a small house with white siding and a separate workshop behind it. The door open. I could smell sawdust before I even parked. He was waiting on the front steps, tall, lean, with short silver hair, and eyes that were blue-gray, deep-set, the exact same shade I see every morning when I look in the mirror. He did not move to hug me. He simply stood there, hands at his sides, eyes filled with something that looked like it had been building for a very long time. "Come in," he said. The kitchen was small, clean, and simple. There was a pot of coffee on the counter, 2 mugs already set out, and on the table, a cardboard box, the kind used to store old records, sealed with packing tape that had clearly been opened and closed more than once. "Sit down," Thomas said. "I do not know where to start." "Start with 1991, I said. He nodded, poured coffee, and sat across from me. "I met your mother in the summer of 1991. I was building custom cabinets for the diner where she worked. The one on Route 4, the place with the pie display in the window. She was 23, I was 29. He looked down at the table. "It lasted 3 months. Then she told me it was over. She said she had met someone else, Greg. 2 months later, she was married and pregnant. With me?" I asked. Thomas looked up. "With you." Thomas opened the box. Inside, there was a folder, a small stack of copied documents, and a sealed envelope with my name written on it in handwriting I did not recognize. "That is Greg's handwriting," Thomas said, pointing to the envelope. "He gave me this box in September 2014. He drove out here on a Wednesday afternoon. I had not seen him in more than 20 years. Why did he come to you?" Thomas placed his hands flat on the table. He was sick. He knew he did not have much time. He sat in that chair, the one you are sitting in now, and he told me 3 things. I waited. First, he told me you were my daughter. He said he had known since you were 6 months old. A routine blood test showed that your blood type did not match his or Linda's the way it should have. He figured it out and he stayed. He said it was never a question for him. Thomas opened the folder. Second, he told me what your mother did. In 1993, Linda convinced Greg's mother, Evelyn, to sign a document transferring the mineral rights on 40 acres of Shaw family land. Linda told Evelyn it was a tax form. It was not. The rights were transferred to a company called Harmon. Harmon, I said. That is my mother's maiden name, and your Aunt Pamela's, Thomas replied. They created it together. They sold those mineral rights to a small energy company for $47,000. Evelyn never received a single cent. He paused and let that settle. The third thing Greg told me was that he wrote a letter the year you were born. He said he hid it in a place where Linda would see it every day, but never dared to move it. Behind the mirror. Behind the mirror. He repeated it slowly, like he wanted to be sure I understood. And I put my phone number on the back. He looked directly at me and said, "When you called, I needed to be ready." I was still driving on the highway back to Cedar Hollow when my phone rang. It was Pamela. "Where have you been?" "I have been at the house all morning." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "I was out where?" "I have been calling you." I took a breath. "What do you need, Aunt Pam?" Her tone shifted immediately. It became smooth and controlled. The way she speaks when she wants something to sound polite. "The memorial is Saturday. I invited the entire congregation. Pastor Thompson will be doing a reading. It is going to be beautiful." I kept my eyes on the road. You planned a memorial at my mother's house without asking me. It is what Linda would have wanted. Do not make this difficult. On both sides of the road, the soybean fields stretched out, turning gold in the October light. There is also some paperwork I need you to review before Saturday, Pamela continued. Transfer documents for the house. Just to keep everything simple from a legal perspective. Your mother wanted this, Mara. Do not turn it into something unpleasant. I am not signing anything right now. There was silence. Then her voice dropped lower and sharper. You are making a mistake. I already told people the house situation is settled. Then you told them something that is not true. And that is your problem to fix. Another pause. Then Derek's voice came through the phone like he had taken it from her. Just sign the papers, Merritt. Nobody wants this to drag out. I ended the call. My hand stayed steady on the wheel. But my jaw was so tight my teeth started to ache. She had already told the church, the neighbors, maybe half the town, that the house belonged to her. She was building her version of the story before I even had the chance to tell mine. I thought about the box in Thomas's kitchen, the documents inside it, the name Harmon Holdings. Pamela was not only trying to take the house, she was trying to bury everything inside it, and she was running out of time. Before I left Millbrook, Thomas had given me a name, Margaret Holloway, an estate attorney with an office in Springfield. Greg hired her in 2014, Thomas told me. She helped him set things up. She will know what to do. I called her that evening from my mother's kitchen table, with the letter placed in front of me. The receptionist transferred my call after I said one sentence. I am calling about Greg Shaw's estate. Margaret Holloway's voice was direct, professional, but also calm, like someone who had spent years working with people in difficult situations. Mara Shaw, she said, I have been expecting your call eventually. That was the second time in 3 days someone told me they had been waiting for me. It was becoming clear that my father had spent his final year putting things in place that I was only now beginning to understand. Greg created a trust in your name in 2014, Margaret explained. Approximately $35,000. He wanted you to have resources if things became complicated. They are already complicated. I assumed they might be. He also left copies of certain property records with me, mineral rights transfers, an LLC filing, documents he wanted protected outside the family home in case anything was removed or destroyed. I told her about the handwritten will Pamela had filed. Margaret did not change her tone, but I could hear her writing notes. I will need to review it. If the signature is forged, that is a felony in Illinois. For now, I can file a legal challenge on Monday and place a hold on the probate process. There is a memorial on Saturday, I said, at the house. My aunt organized it. She paused. Would you like me to be there? Yes, then I will attend. And Mara, bring the original letter. I ended the call and sat in the quiet kitchen. My father had built a safety plan long before he passed away. Now it was time for me to use it. The next morning, Thursday, I walked across the street to Donna Whitfield's house. Donna is 72 years old. She has lived next door to the Shaw family since before I was born. She has white hair, sharp eyes, and the habit of watering her garden at 6 o'clock in the morning, while noticing everything happening around her. She opened the door before I even knocked. I was wondering when you would come, she said. Come in. I made tea. Her kitchen smelled like chamomile and old wood. A clock ticked steadily on the wall above the stove. She poured 2 cups and sat across from me with the calm patience of someone who had been waiting years to have this conversation. You found something, she said. It was not a question. A letter behind my mom's mirror. Donna nodded slowly. I always wondered when you would start asking questions. I do not know everything, Mara, but I do know some things. She told me about a morning in 1993. She had been trimming her rose bushes near the property line when she heard someone crying on the Shaw front porch. It was my grandmother, Evelyn Shaw, sitting in her rocking chair, hands resting in her lap, tears running down her face. She said, Linda took something from me, but Greg will not let me talk about it. Those were her exact words. I never forgot them. Did she say what it was? No, and I did not push her. It was not my place. But after that, Evelyn sold the rest of her land within a year. She moved into Sunrise Assisted Living and passed away there in 2001. Donna placed her cup down carefully. I also remember a man, dark truck, blue eyes. He drove past your house a few times in 1992. Then he stopped coming. Thomas, I said quietly. Your father, Greg, was a good man, Donna continued, but he carried something heavy his entire life. You could see it in the way he held himself. That afternoon, I went to the Logan County Recorder's office. I had spent 10 years working as a reporter for the Cedar Hollow Register, pulling public records, property deeds, zoning cases, tax liens. It is not the exciting side of journalism, but it is the part that reveals the truth. You learn to read documents the way other people read stories, looking for motive, pattern, and meaning. I filled out a request form for the deed history of the Shaw 40-acre parcel, Section 12, Township 19. 15 minutes later, the clerk handed me a folder. The original deed was in my great-grandfather's name, then passed to my grandfather, then to Evelyn Shaw in 1978, a normal family transfer. Then there was a mineral rights transfer dated August 1993, Evelyn Shaw to Harmon LLC. The signature was unsteady, the handwriting of a 74-year-old woman whose eyesight had been declining. Harmon. I searched for the LLC registration next. Filed in Illinois in August 1993, to listed members. Linda H. Shaw and Pamela R. Harmon, my mother and my aunt. Right there on an official county document. Clear and undeniable. The mineral rights were sold 5 weeks after the LLC was created. The buyer was Prairie Basin Energy, a small exploration company. The sale price was $47,000. I continued searching. Prairie Basin had later been acquired by a larger company. The mineral rights were still active, generating quarterly payments of about $800 every 3 months. Those payments were still being sent to Pamela Osborne. Same address, same name, for over 20 years. More than $60,000 in total. Money from rights my grandmother signed away believing she was completing a simple tax form. I took photos of every document, organized them, and placed them into a folder labeled with the date. Pamela was not just someone who helped my mother hide the truth. She was a co-founder of the company that took something from my grandmother, and she had been collecting money from it every few months ever since. I returned to the house around 5 o'clock. Pamela was already there. She had let herself inside. I still did not know how she had a key. She had spent the afternoon rearranging the living room for the memorial. The couch was pushed against the wall. Folding chairs were stacked near the door, borrowed from the church. The photos were gone. Every framed picture that had been on the walls, my parents' wedding, my father holding me as a baby, the 3 of us at my college graduation, had been removed. In their place were 2 black and white portraits of Linda and Pamela as children, wearing matching dresses. Why did you take down the family photos? I asked. Pamela did not turn around. She was adjusting a vase of white lilies on the mantel. I am preparing for the memorial. This is what your mother would have wanted. You did not ask me. She turned slowly, her smile calm and controlled. Merritt, you have been emotional. Let me take care of this. You just come on Saturday and look presentable. Just come and look presentable. 5 words that told me exactly how she saw me. Not as the daughter, but as a background figure in a story she was controlling. From the garage, I heard Derek moving something into his truck. I walked outside. He had 2 boxes filled with my father's tools. The Craftsman set, the levels, the old Stanley planes my father kept clean and organized on a board. Derek, put those back. They are just tools. Mara, nobody is using them. Put them back. He stared at me for a moment, then slowly placed the boxes back on the floor like he was doing me a favor. When I went back inside, I saw Pamela coming up from the basement. She was holding a small brass key. She slipped it into her pocket quickly when she noticed me watching. The safe, my mother's safe, was in the basement, and Pamela had the key. Saturday was only 2 days away. Saturday arrived gray and cold. The kind of October morning where the clouds hang low and the sunlight never fully breaks through. By 10 o'clock, cars lined both sides of Maple Street. Pamela had made sure of that. The entire congregation from Grace Lutheran Church was there, along with neighbors and several of Linda's co-workers from the county clerk's office, where she worked for 19 years. About 30 people filled the living room, folding chairs arranged in rows, white lilies placed everywhere, a framed photo of Linda on a small stand near the fireplace. Pamela stood by the front door, greeting everyone in a black dress, pearl earrings, and a tissue in her hand. She hugged each person and repeated the same line. Thank you for coming. Linda would have loved this. Derek stood near the kitchen entrance with his arms crossed, watching the room carefully. Pastor Thompson sat in the front row with a Bible resting on his knee. Donna Whitfield sat quietly in the back corner, holding her teacup, her eyes moving across the room as she observed everything. I arrived at 10:15 with Nate. I wore a black blouse, gray pants, and my hair pulled back. I had slept maybe 3 hours. In my bag were the original letter, the documents I had collected, and a copy of the LLC filing. Margaret Holloway arrived at 10:20. She wore a navy suit, carried a leather briefcase, and had reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She introduced herself to Pamela as a friend of Linda's from Springfield. Pamela smiled, shook her hand, and did not question it. Thomas Beckett was not inside the house. He was sitting in his truck 2 blocks away, waiting for my call. There were 30 people in my mother's living room, and not one of them knew the truth that was standing right there among them. Pamela stood up at 10:30 and began speaking before the pastor could start. She dabbed her eyes and addressed the room with a speech that sounded practiced. Linda was my best friend, my sister, my support. Her voice broke slightly at the right moment. She asked me personally to take care of this house after she was gone. She wanted it to remain in the family. She wanted it to stay with someone who loved it as much as she did. She looked directly at me. The eye contact was intentional, and I know Mara understands. She has been through so much. We all want what is best for her. Several people nodded. Mrs. Gavin from the choir placed her hand on her chest. Pastor Thompson rested his hand on Pamela's shoulder. Then Derek stood and began passing around a large white card that read in loving memory of Linda Shaw. "If you would like to sign," he said, moving from person to person. "There is also a small note on the back about the house. Just a formality to make sure Linda's wishes are respected." I watched as he handed the card to Mr. Peterson, the retired postmaster. He signed the front, then turned it over and paused. I leaned slightly and saw the back. Below the signatures was a printed paragraph. It read, "We, the undersigned, confirm that Linda Shaw expressed her intention to transfer ownership of the property at 412 Maple Street to her sister Pamela Osborne. She had hidden a legal statement inside a sympathy card." I looked at Nate across the room. He had seen it too. I did not sign. When the card reached Donna Whitfield, she read it carefully, placed it face down on the chair beside her, and took a slow sip of tea. At 11 o'clock, the card returned to Derek. He counted the signatures, frowned, and looked directly at me. "You did not sign?" "No, Derek." Pamela stepped beside him and gently placed her hand on my arm, guiding me toward the kitchen, which opened directly into the living room where every word could be heard. "Merritt, you are being selfish. Your mother just passed away, and you are thinking about property. I am not the one who brought transfer papers to a memorial." Her hand dropped. The kindness disappeared from her face. "Your mother told me you would act like this," she said louder, making sure everyone could hear. "She said you always cared about money. Always taking, never giving. She spent her last 2 years alone while you were busy chasing your small newspaper stories." The room fell silent. I could feel everyone watching. Derek stepped closer. "Just sign it, Mara. Do not embarrass yourself." I looked past him into the living room. Mrs. Gavin covered her mouth. Mr. Peterson stared down. Pastor Thompson's face was tense. In that moment, they were deciding who to believe, the devoted sister or the distant daughter. My throat tightened. My hands curled into fists. Every instinct told me to fight back, to speak, to defend myself. But instead I said, "I need 5 minutes." Pamela blinked. She had expected a confrontation. She had expected tears. She received neither. I walked through the kitchen, stepped out the back door, and into the yard. The cold air hit my face like a splash of water. 30 people had just heard my aunt call me a taker. In that silence, I could feel each person quietly choosing a side. I stood near the back fence beside the oak tree my father planted the year I started kindergarten. My hands began to shake. I let them. I took out my phone and called Thomas. He answered on the first ring. "Can you come now? I need you here. I am 2 blocks away. I can be there in 3 minutes. Bring the box. It is already in the truck." I ended the call, took one breath, then another. Then I walked back inside through the kitchen. I passed Pamela, who stood at the counter holding a glass of water, looking calm and satisfied. I passed Derek, who was gathering sympathy cards from the last row of chairs, and then moved through the living room where no one would meet my eyes. I sat down next to Margaret Holloway. "I need you to stay," I said quietly, "and I need the trust documents." Margaret opened her briefcase slightly on her lap. I saw the edge of a manila folder with a typed label. She nodded once. "I have everything." I leaned back, folded my hands, and waited. Pamela watched me from across the room. I could see her trying to understand what had changed. A minute ago I had been pulling back. Now I was sitting still with a calm she did not recognize. 3 minutes passed. 5:10 Nate came and sat beside me. He did not ask anything. He just sat. 45 minutes total. That is how long I stayed in that room, surrounded by people who had just been told I was selfish and ungrateful. I did not explain, I did not argue, and I did not leave. I let my aunt believe she had already won because the sound I was waiting for, the knock on the front door, came at exactly 11:52. And everything in that room was about to change. Derek opened the door. A tall man stood on the porch, with silver hair, blue-gray eyes, and a cardboard box tucked under one arm. "I am here for Mira," Thomas said. Derek looked him up and down. Who are you? Before Thomas could answer, Pamela was already on her feet. She had been in the middle of a conversation with Mrs. Gavin. The color drained from her face in a way she could not hide. What are you doing here? Pamela's voice was tight and controlled, but her hands showed the truth. She gripped the back of a folding chair so hard her knuckles turned white. You have no right to be in this house. She knew him. She recognized him immediately. 34 years had passed, and she still knew his face. I stood up. I invited him. The room shifted. Every head turned. 30 people looking between me, Pamela, and the man standing in the doorway. Thomas stepped inside. He placed the box on the coffee table. He looked at me, and for a moment, everything else faded. It was just the two of us, a father and a daughter standing in the same room for the first time in their lives. Donna Whitfield leaned forward in her chair. Her teacup paused halfway to her lips. She studied Thomas with the slow recognition of someone connecting a 30-year-old memory to the present. Pastor Thompson stood up. Mira, what is happening? I looked around the room, at the people who had come to mourn my mother, at the aunt who had spent the past week trying to take my home, at the man who had been waiting 11 years for a phone call. Everyone, I said, this is Thomas Beckett. He is my biological father, and he has something all of you need to see. Pamela's face told me everything. She had seen him before, and she knew what was inside that box. I am going to pause for a moment because what came out of that box, what Margaret took from her briefcase, and the look on my aunt's face still stays with me at night. If this story has your attention, press the like button now. Do not wait, because the next part is where everything I believed about my family began to fall apart and something new began. Tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? I want to hear your story. Now back to the living room. 30 people, one box, and the truth. I took the letter from my bag, the original envelope, yellowed with age, the ink faded, my mother's name written on the front. 3 weeks ago, I said, my mother passed away. 2 weeks ago, I was cleaning her bedroom and found this behind her dresser mirror. It is a letter written by my father, Greg Shaw, the year I was born. The room went completely quiet. No coughing, no movement. Even Derek stopped. I unfolded the paper and read every word out loud. I had the blood test done when she was 6 months old. I know she is not mine, but she is my daughter. I chose her. I will keep choosing her. If you ever tell her the truth, I will tell her what you did to my mother's land. I lowered the letter. Mrs. Gavin pressed her hand against her chest. Mr. Peterson had removed his glasses and held them in his lap. Pastor Thompson sat completely still, his Bible untouched. My father knew I was not his biological daughter from the time I was an infant. I said he chose to stay. He chose me, every single day for 24 years. I looked at Thomas. He stood by the door, his arms at his sides, his eyes red. He did not speak. This man, Thomas Beckett, is my biological father. My mother kept him away from me for 34 years. She told him that if he ever tried to contact me, she would file a harassment charge. A quiet reaction moved through the room like a wave. People turned their heads, looking at Thomas, then at me, then at Pamela. Donna Whitfield placed her teacup on the windowsill. Let the girls speak, Pamela, Donna said, her voice calm but firm. Pamela had not spoken yet, but she was about to. The letter also mentioned something else, I said. Something my mother did. What you did to my mother's land. I opened the folder from Thomas's box and held up the first document. In August 1993, my mother and my Aunt Pamela convinced my grandmother, Evelyn Shaw, to sign a transfer of mineral rights on 40 acres of Shaw family land. They told her it was a tax adjustment form. It was not. I placed the document on the coffee table for anyone to see. They created a limited liability company called Harmon Holdings. Harmon was my mother's maiden name and my aunt's maiden name. They registered it that same month. Then they sold the mineral rights to an energy company for $47,000. The quiet reaction grew stronger. Mr. Peterson put his glasses back on. Two women from the church choir exchanged looks. My grandmother Evelyn never understood what she signed. She was 74, her vision was failing. She trusted her daughter-in-law. Pamela stood up quickly. That is a lie. Those are fake documents. You do not know what you are talking about. Margaret Holloway remained calm. She stepped forward and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. My name is Margaret Holloway. I am an estate attorney. I have certified copies obtained directly from the Logan County Recorder's office. These documents are public record. Anyone here can verify them. The room fell silent in a way I had never felt before. It was not empty silence, but full silence, filled with people rethinking everything they believed. Derek grabbed Pamela's arm. Mom, let us go. Pamela did not move. Her face had gone pale. Her mouth was open but no words came out. I did not raise my voice because I did not need to. The documents spoke clearly. Pamela changed her approach quickly, like someone with no options left. Tears came first. Whether real or not, it did not matter. They rolled down her cheeks as she faced the room, her voice breaking. Linda was my sister. We did what we had to do to survive. That land was not being used. Evelyn's taxes were overwhelming her. We helped her. She pointed at me. Her hand shook, but her voice became stronger. And you think you can stand there and judge us? You do not even know who you are. You were a mistake, Mira, a mistake your mother spent her whole life paying for. The word hit hard. I felt it in my chest. 30 people heard it. Mrs. Gavin closed her eyes. A woman from the choir covered her mouth. Thomas spoke for the first time since he arrived. His voice was low and steady, not angry, just certain. She was never a mistake. She was the best thing that ever happened to all of us, including Greg. He told me that himself. Pamela turned toward him. You do not get to speak. You are not here. You are nothing. I was nothing because your sister made sure of it, Thomas said. But Greg made sure it would not stay that way. From the back of the room, Donna Whitfield spoke. I remember Evelyn crying on her porch, Pamela, in the summer of '93. She said Linda took something from her. I remember. Pamela looked around the room, searching for someone to support her. She found no one. Derek pulled her arm again. Mom, we need to leave now. Pamela allowed him to guide her toward the door, but before leaving, she turned and looked directly at me. You will regret this, Mira. Your mother would be ashamed of you. The door closed behind them. Derek's truck started. The sound of gravel shifted under the tires. Then they were gone. No one spoke for what felt like a full minute. Then Pastor Thompson stood and walked toward me. He took both of my hands in his. His grip was warm, steady, and firm. Your father was one of the most decent men I have ever known, he said, and I believe you have just shown everyone here that you carry the same strength. Behind him, Mr. Peterson stood. Then Mrs. Gavin. Then others, one by one, like a group rising together. Mr. Peterson walked over to Thomas and extended his hand. You must be the cabinet maker. Evelyn mentioned you once years ago. She said you were skilled with wood. Thomas shook his hand. I still am. Donna brought him a cup of tea. She did not speak. She simply placed it in his hands and gave him a look that made it clear he was welcome. Margaret stepped beside me. The handwritten will Pamela filed. I will challenge it first thing Monday morning. Based on the signature differences and what we have seen today, I do not believe it will stand. Thank you. Do not thank me. Thank your father. He planned this long ago. Nate stood in the kitchen doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. He caught my eye and gave me a small nod. I looked at Thomas. He stood by the window holding the tea Donna had given him, looking out at the street he used to drive past 30 years ago without stopping. We did not hug. We were not ready for that, but we were in the same room, and neither of us was leaving. I did not receive applause. I received something better. 30 people who finally saw the truth, and a living room that, for the first time in decades, held no secrets. Monday morning, Margaret filed the challenge at the Logan County Probate Court by 9:00 a.m. She had spent Sunday reviewing the handwritten will Pamela submitted. The main body of the document was close. Someone had carefully studied Linda's handwriting, but the signature at the bottom revealed to clear issues. The cross on the T in Shaw leaned in the wrong direction, and the S had a loop at the base that Linda never used. Margaret had 14 verified samples of Linda's signature from tax documents, insurance papers, and her driver's license renewal. A court-appointed handwriting expert confirmed it within the week. The signature showed multiple differences that indicated it was copied rather than naturally written. The probate judge suspended the handwritten will for further review. The house remained in Mira Shaw's name under Illinois intestacy law. Margaret also sent a certified letter to Pamela Osborne. It requested a full financial report and repayment of all royalty income from the mineral rights, estimated at $64,000 over 20 years. Based on quarterly payments of about $800, she will fight it, Margaret told me on the phone. But the documentation is solid. The company records the deed transfer, the royalty payments, everything is recorded. I asked about criminal charges. You could file fraud charges for the forged will and possibly elder financial abuse related to the mineral rights transfer. I thought about it carefully. No, I said, I do not need her in prison. I need her out of my life. Margaret paused. That is your decision. The civil case alone will recover the money and establish the truth. I did not want revenge. I wanted the truth to have consequences, and there is a difference. It was something I was only beginning to understand. The trust fund was deposited into my account on a Wednesday, $35,000. It was not a large amount by most standards, but it meant more to me than any money I had ever received because every dollar represented a choice. Greg Shaw, the man who knew I was not his biological daughter before I could even walk, had spent the last year of his life quietly saving money, Pulling from small accounts Linda did not monitor, from what Margaret described as a personal fund he had been building for years. He could not confront Linda. That chance ended in 1992 when he wrote the letter. But he found another way to create something quietly, and he did. There was one more item Margaret had been holding onto. A second letter, sealed and addressed to me. Greg had written it in 2014 and left it with Margaret along with clear instructions. Give this to Mira when she comes to you. I opened it in my car, parked outside Margaret's office in Springfield, completely alone. Mira, if you are reading this, it means you found the letter. I am sorry I could not tell you in person. I was afraid you would believe I loved you less if you knew the truth. But the truth is the opposite. I chose you every single morning for 24 years. That was never a burden. It was the easiest decision I ever made. Everything I left with Margaret belongs to you. Use it however you need. And if Thomas Beckett is a good man, and I believe he is, give him a chance. You are my daughter, always. Dad, I stayed in that car for a long time. The engine was off. The parking lot was empty. I read the letter 4 times and I cried every single time. Then I drove home and placed both letters on the dresser, right where the mirror had been, where they truly belonged. The following Saturday, I drove to Millbrook. I did not have a plan, no documents, no prepared questions written in a notebook. I simply got into the car and went. Thomas was in his workshop when I arrived. The large door was open, and I could hear the steady sound of a sander along with a country music station playing softly from a paint-covered radio on a shelf. He was working on a chair, made of pine from the look of it, simple in design, for legs, a flat seat, and a curved back, the kind you would see on a farmhouse porch. He looked up when I walked in, turned off the sander, and said nothing. I sat on a stool near the workbench. Sawdust covered the floor. The air smelled like freshly cut wood and varnish. I am not trying to replace Greg, Thomas said after a while. I could not and I would not. I know, I said. Then what do you want? I paused and thought about it. I thought about the 34 years behind us, the letters, the phone number, the waiting. There was no way to fit all of that into one afternoon, one conversation, or one connection. It would take years, maybe a lifetime. I want to start from here, I said. He looked at me, then back at the chair. Do you want to learn how to sand? I laughed. It was the first real laugh in 3 weeks. It surprised me, how natural it felt, how it came from somewhere deep and unguarded. Yes, I said. He handed me a piece of 120 grit sandpaper and showed me the direction of the wood grain. After that, we did not talk much. There was only the quiet sound of sandpaper against wood, the soft music from the radio, and the two of us working side by side on something simple and real. He did not try to act like my father that day. He simply showed me how to sand a piece of oak, and somehow, that was enough. The story spread the way stories usually do in small towns, not through headlines, but through conversations in kitchens, parking lots, and the produce aisle at Clarkson's Market. By the end of that week, Cedar Hollow did not know every detail, but they knew enough. Enough to know that Pamela Osborne had submitted a forged will. Enough to know about Harmon Holdings. Enough to know about Thomas Beckett standing in that living room. Pastor Thompson asked Pamela to step down from the church council. He called it temporary leave, but everyone understood it was permanent. 3 families who had been close to Pamela for decades, the Gavins, the Petersons, and the Warners, stopped answering her calls. Mrs. Gavin told Donna Whitfield, I signed that card. I almost signed something I did not understand, and that frightens me. Derek lost work contracts the following week. He had been doing renovation jobs for homeowners in the area, kitchen remodels and deck repairs. Both clients canceled after hearing what happened. One of them told him directly, I cannot trust someone like that working inside my home. Pamela called me once, the final call. You have destroyed this family, she said. I was standing at the kitchen sink, washing a coffee mug, looking out the window at the oak tree in the backyard. This family was destroyed 34 years ago, Pamela, I said. I just found the truth. She ended the call. She never called again. Derek moved out of the county within a month. I heard he went to Peoria to find work where no one knew him. I did not follow up. I did not check. I did not need to know what happened to Pamela after everything settled. She said I destroyed the family, but you cannot destroy something built on lies. You can only stop pretending it was still standing. The nights were the most difficult. During the day, I could keep myself busy. There were documents to sign, calls with Margaret, and updates to file at the county office. Staying active helped, but at night, alone in the house, that was when the grief became complicated. I would be washing dishes and hear my mother's voice in my mind asking, Did you eat, baby girl? I would walk past her bedroom and smell her lavender hand cream. I would see her handwriting on a grocery list stuck to the refrigerator, milk, eggs, dish soap, and my chest would tighten. She lied to me for 34 years. She kept my father away from me. She took from my grandmother. She allowed Pamela to build a life based on deception. And she was also the woman who sat beside my bed when I had nightmares, who drove through a snowstorm to bring me soup during my first winter living alone, who called me every Sunday at 7 p.m. for 10 years without missing a single week. I could not hate her. I tried on some nights. But grief does not work that way. You cannot choose only the clear emotions like anger or certainty. The softer feelings come as well, without permission, and they exist beside the pain. I called Nate one night around midnight. I am not okay yet, I said, but I think I will be. Take your time, he said. I am not going anywhere. After we ended the call, I sat on the back porch. The oak tree stood dark against the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and then stopped. Grief is not just one feeling. It is not only sadness or anger or love. It is all of them at the same time, competing for space, and you do not get to decide which one comes first. You simply learn to make room. 2 weeks after the memorial, a routine began to form. It was not normal, and I was not sure normal would return, but it was something steady. Donna came over every Tuesday morning with pie, usually apple, sometimes peach. She never asked how I was doing. She would walk in, place the pie on the counter, sit at the kitchen table, and drink tea. Sometimes we spoke. Most of the time we did not. It was enough to have someone present who did not need explanations. I returned to work at the Register. My editor, Carolyn, had kept my column open for me. I did not write about my family. Instead, I wrote about mineral rights, specifically how elderly landowners in rural Illinois can become targets of deed fraud, how it happens, what warning signs to watch for, and what steps to take if you suspect it. I used public data, county records, and several anonymous examples. The article was picked up by 2 other newspapers in the state. The county clerk's office even posted it on their website. It did not fix everything, but it turned something painful into something useful, and that felt like progress. Thomas called every Friday. The conversations were short, about 10 minutes, sometimes less. He would tell me what he was building that week. A bookshelf, a rocking chair, or coasters made from reclaimed barn wood. I would tell him about whatever story I was working on. I made an extra chair, he said one Friday. If you want it, I can bring it on Saturday. After the call ended, I walked through the living room and put the family photos back on the wall. All of them, Greg, Linda, and a photo of me at graduation. Next to them, I added a new picture I had taken with my phone, Thomas in his workshop, sanding wood, sawdust on his sleeves. Because my story is not about removing anyone. It is about finally seeing everything clearly. I want to speak to you for a moment, not about legal documents, or the house or the court filings, but about something more difficult to define. I used to believe loyalty meant never questioning anything, that being a good daughter meant accepting whatever story your parents gave you, even when things did not make sense, even when something felt wrong and you could not explain why. I believed family meant keeping the peace no matter the cost, that asking difficult questions meant you were ungrateful, that setting a boundary meant shutting someone out completely. I was wrong. Loyalty is not silence, and family is not control. Pamela used those words, family, loyalty, your mother's wishes, the way some people use them to hold power, to keep truth hidden, to make you feel guilty for wanting answers, for wanting the basic right to understand your own life. I ended contact with Pamela and Derek. No announcement, no dramatic conversation, no letter. I simply stopped responding, stopped engaging, stopped participating in a situation that had been designed for years to keep me small. Some people would call that cold. Some people in Cedar Hollow probably still do. I call it peace. Setting a boundary does not mean you do not care about someone. It means you care about yourself enough to stop accepting less than honesty. The first time you truly do it, it feels unfamiliar, like stepping forward and realizing the ground was only 6 in below you all along. You were never as trapped as you believed. I did not make a speech or write a statement. I simply stopped answering, and for the first time in my life, the silence belonged to me. I think about my father every day, Greg Shaw, the man who stayed. He never told me the truth directly, and for a while, I was angry about that. I would lie awake at night asking why he did not just tell me, why he left a letter behind a mirror, a phone number, and a box instead. But as time passed, I began to understand. He was afraid I would think he loved me less, afraid the truth would change how I saw him, so he did what he could. He stayed, he planned, and he prepared a way forward, even as he faced an illness he knew he would not survive. He did not just write a letter. He drove to Thomas's house when he could barely walk. He hired a lawyer. He created a trust fund. He gathered documents, made copies, and sealed everything carefully. He did all of this in 2014, 1 year before cancer took his life. And he did it quietly, without telling anyone except Thomas and Margaret. Some people show love with words. My father showed love through preparation, through planning ahead, through patience that only comes when time is limited and you want to protect the people you will leave behind. He could not protect me from the truth, so he made sure the truth would protect me when it finally came. I keep both letters framed now, the one he wrote to my mother in 1990 and the one he wrote to me in 2014. They hang in the hallway, visible, not hidden, exactly where they belong. Thomas and I are not having father and daughter dinners every Sunday. We are not taking long trips or trying to recover 34 years all at once. That is not how this works, at least not yet. But last Saturday, I drove to Millbrook again. I have been going most weekends now. He was in the workshop as usual, the radio was on, and he was working on a new project, a shelf made from simple white pine. "Do you want to help?" he asked. I said yes. We worked for 2 hours. He showed me how to measure twice because wood does not forgive mistakes, and how to countersink a screw so the surface stays smooth. He did not over-explain. He showed me once, watched me try, and stepped in only when I asked. When the shelf was finished, I brought it home and hung it in the living room above the place where the folding chairs had been during the memorial. I sent him a picture. He replied, "It is a little uneven, just like mine." I laughed so hard that I startled the neighbor's cat off the porch. A slightly uneven shelf, the first thing I have ever inherited from Thomas Becket. Not money, not a last name, not even a story, just a small shared habit. I will take it. We have time now. For the first time in 34 years, we have time. I do not know what that time will become, whether it turns into holidays and traditions or remains simple Saturdays in the workshop, with sawdust, quiet, and steady work. Either way, I will be there and he will be there. I do not need everything at once. I just need him to be there next Saturday, and the one after that. That is how something real is built, one day at a time, one step at a time. If you are listening and you are holding onto a secret, or you feel that someone in your family is hiding one from you, I want to say this clearly. The truth does not destroy families. Lies do, silence does. The truth only reveals what was already broken, and once you can see it clearly, you can begin to build something honest. I understand how frightening it can feel to ask questions, to look deeper, to make that call. It can feel like everything might fall apart, and sometimes it will. It did for me. The family I believed I had is not what I thought, but in return, I gained something real. I gained 2 fathers, one who chose me every day and one who waited 34 years for a chance to know me. I gained a lawyer who protected a letter for years because a dying man trusted her. I gained a neighbor who remembered my grandmother's pain and held onto that memory for 30 years. I gained a friend named Nate who stood beside me without trying to fix anything, just offering quiet support. I gained the truth and with it, freedom. My name is Mira Shaw. I am 34 years old. My father was Greg Shaw. My biological father is Thomas Becket. My mother was Linda Harmon Shaw. And for the first time in my life, I understand who I am because I stopped allowing others to define it for me. The truth does not come with instructions, but it does bring freedom, and I will choose that every time. This is my story. I shared it because I needed to, and I shared it here because I believe some of you needed to hear it. If you have ever uncovered a secret that changed everything, or if you are still deciding whether to ask the difficult questions, share your experience. Was it worth it? Would you do it again? And if this story stayed with you, take a look at the video in the description. It is another story about family that I believe you will understand. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for being here.